We're recording.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Sorry for my tardiness. We will call this meeting to order at 4:05. And then do we need to have a roll call?
Yes, ma'am.
Veronica,
Here.
Preston, okay, Preston is absent. Rustin,
Here.
Michael Trujillo is absent. Chris Wood.
Here.
And Mike Miller.
Here.
Okay, all right then, and we have a quorum.
Okay, I'm just pulling up the agenda now. Give me just a second. Okay, are we going to start with the AP check report?
We need a approval of minutes. Veronica.
Okay, sorry, I don't have the agenda in front of me.
I'll forward it to you.
Okay. It's not on the meeting invite.
Should have been set separately.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, item 3 is approval of minutes for the meeting held on May 22nd, 2024. You did
So
have
moved.
those in your packet.
Second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by, was it Chris?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Wood and a second by Mr. Self. All in favor, please state by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, discussion and action items. Item 1, ratification of the Finance Department's action on bills and expenses approval report for the month of May and June 2024. Ms. Rivera.
So Veronica, I don't know if you've got this handy, but we sent out the May and the June report. You'll see in the reports I put together, the May summary sheet that lists by department the totals. The grand total for the month of May was just a little over 1 million. And then summary sheet will show that total. And then I sent the AP check report for May, and that'll follow that summary worksheet, and it will list by vendor all the payments that would pay to that vendor. In the past, I saw where Maryland would send a council report. For some reason, that's no longer in Encode. I couldn't find it anywhere, and I called Encode Software Tech, and they couldn't find it. So it's the check report, but at least it gives you the same detail and information that it would be presented on that council report. So you know the details, what it was for, okay? And then you'll see, of course, the GL account in case there's any questions. On the June report, it was significantly more because we're trying to push out any FY24 checks that need to be in that fiscal year. There will be some in July and even in the next month or so that will go back to fiscal year 24. The auditors help with adjusting entries so that those payments go back to that fiscal year. But this will capture most of them. You'll see on there, it's a little over 2.4 million total. In the very back on the AP check report in June, you'll see that the amount differs, but it differs by $3,296 because we did have a voided check. So that's what the difference is you'll see a total in the AP report, and then you'll see the total on this June summary sheet, okay? And then again, that summary June report will also show the funds, the totals that came out of those funds. And I know this was hot off the press, so a lot of people didn't have the time to review all the checks and vendors and what might stick out. So in the time being, if you take it home or look at it later, please call me if you have any questions and I can provide more information or clarity or anything on it. Okay. Okay, any questions on AP bills report? Ms. Veronica?
No, I don't have any questions, but I do, would like to state that the way you presented this with the check report, the vendor, and how the invoice came through, all of that, I really, really like this format, so thank you for that.
Okay, good. That was my next question is, that way it provides all the information you need. So if they ask what it was for, it should list on there the details. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions on the reports, the AP check reports for May or June?
Liliana, you've gone through and you're pretty comfortable with all these, this is all accurate and everything.
So I'm somewhat comfortable with it because I came in June 3rd. And of course, this is after the fact stuff that has happened and occurred before I came in. I did go through quite a bit of journal entries to recode some expenses, some revenues that were listed as expenses. But for the most part, I feel pretty.
So there's still a lot of cleanup.
There's still a lot of cleanup work. You're gonna see that in budget adjustments. We're gonna be working through budget adjustments even in the fiscal year, so. I wish there was more time to do all that and clean up, but
Well,
with a whole year that
I guess we need to give you at least what, 4 hours of sleep a night or something like
a
that.
little bit would be nice.
I tell you what, she has been doing her due diligence in many ways and working many long hours for her staff. Been phenomenal.
That's what I was really excited about you guys.
Yeah, it has been a lot of work. I'm hoping we can just take a little bite at a time and keep moving forward in the right direction.
Yes,
Thank you.
Efforts.
Okay, if we have no other questions, we'll move on to item 2, approval of resolution 2024-21, fourth quarter fiscal year 2024 budget adjustments.
So your next sheet looks like this.
Okay.
And it says on their budget adjustments 2024, and it'll list several of them.
We need a motion finance committee for the ratification.
Do we need one for each line? I think we do.
Veronica, do we need a motion and approval from the finance committee for this to go to council for the item 1, the ratification?
We've never done an approval for the ratifications. It was just informational. Is that right, Mike? If you're talking, you're on mute.
Here we go. It wouldn't let me unmute. Yes, we do need a motion of a recommendation from the finance committee to the full council.
For the full council, okay. So, sorry, let's backtrack to item 1 with no further questions. What is the pleasure of the finance committee?
Motion to approve.
Second,
We have a motion by Mr. Self and a second by Mr. Wood. If, all in favor, state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? With that, motion carries. Thank you for the correction. Okay, now we'll move on to item 2.
So in your packet, you have the budget adjustments for the fourth quarter. You've got them on there listed. This is, of course, generated from the LGBMS as per Department of Finance. And we can go through most of them, if not touch on the bigger amounts that you'll see. So the 720,000 adjustment that you see, it says a transfer out, so it's coming out from general fund going into our capital projects fund, Fund 301 that we have in Encode. There is some state or grant for the state park, or the skate park, state park. And a lot of that's what that is covering that, because a lot of those expenses were paid in FY 24 and we haven't received reimbursement because it just got submitted. So that's why that transfer, we need those funds in there to cover that cash deficit. Okay, so when we get reimbursed, you should be able to see budget adjustment bringing back that amount to general fund. The next one is in our governing body, our council budget, to cover attorney fees. The budget has definitely exceeded, and the council budget was over budget by about 29,000. So the 40,000 is to cover the attorney fees that were over 37,000. And then, 60,000 is the budget adjustment to the manager's salary full-time positions. Right now, it's over budget by 58,000. That of course will cover any expenditures that will be accrued back to fiscal year 24. That budget also was over budget, so that's why. Now, some line items are definitely over budget, but because of time, due to time, I could only make really a sense one budget adjustment, kind of in a sense to cover it all. So it's not every line item making a budget adjustment. That was the budget, okay? Also 13,000 budget adjustment to the retirement. That was over budget by over $9,000. Then going into planning and zoning, that budget adjustment is 130,000. So I'm not quite sure yet. I need to really dive down and deep and see whose salaries are coming out of that one.
So the issue is animal control was under a different department prior to this fiscal year that we're talking about. When they got moved under planning and zoning, the budget adjustment didn't take place to accommodate for those, I think, 4 positions or 3 positions. So that was the issue there.
So you'll see that one was clearly, that planning and zoning was over budget quite a bit. So 132 full-time positions, and then 45,000 to their benefits budget expense to cover that over the budget, okay? The next one is our state fire protection fund.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question real quick, please, before we move on to
Yes.
that one?
Yes, sir.
Liana, where you moved all that money to the council, to the managers, where did those funds transfer in from?
So that is still in our general fund.
Okay,
The
so you're just
manager-
moving it from one item. It's not coming from any reserve funds. It's just, you're just moving money around within the fund, within the general fund.
Right, within the fund. So
Okay.
general fund is still in, it's not over budget overall. And so because of the revenues, I'm able to adjust it so that it's not coming from any other budget. It's within general fund itself.
Thank you. I just wasn't clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
This is basically the money that was in the general fund that just hadn't been properly allocated to these
Correct.
departments.
And then because general fund has several budgets underneath it that's still considered general funds. For example, our finance budget was still well under budget, like 100,000. So it's able to carry this budget adjustment so that it doesn't get over budget. Okay, so that takes care of the general fund, budget adjustments. We're going now to our state fire, fund. And this one is to capture the 162,581 is to capture the equipment that was spent on a grant revenue that we received in FY 23, but because of timing issues, the equipment didn't get ordered and delivered until FY 24. So that covers that budget adjustment. Okay. Then the next one is our LEP grant. And we got state permission to budget adjust within this budget from the state. So this is, the police was over budget on their equipment line item. And then they had available in employee training. So the state allowed us to decrease the one budget to be able to add to the equipment line item so that they wouldn't be over budget. And they expended, so they received 119,000 FY 24, and they expended it all in FY 24, so they won't have a carryover. Okay. And then the next one is the laws of 2023 recruitment that the police department received 225,000 for fiscal year 24. So the budget not been established. Okay, so in a sense, this budget adjustment is to establish that budget that occurred in FY 24. In this budget, they expended 160-some thousand, I believe. So we're gonna have a rollover of 58,000. And because they had to use it in FY 24, since they didn't use it all, we have to pay it back. So in FY 25, you'll see a check to be able to pay back the 58,000 that they didn't use. And it's because they did send us the revenue already for the 225 days. The next one's our lodger's tax. That is to adjust it so that it wouldn't be over budget. The cash and the revenue is there, so it didn't put it over budget, but we did have to adjust the revenue 15,000, and then we adjusted promotional, so it expends 15,000. And then going on to our municipal street funds, 360,000. 360,000 is the ARPA amount that was allocated to streets equipment back in fiscal year 23, I believe. It just, the budget adjustment was never recorded in the budget. So that 360,000 is what their ARPA allocated amount was. And they're gonna have about 78,000 that they can use in FY 25 from that. Okay. Okay, the next one is our LGB abatement opioid fund. We had received about $8,000, and then in February, we received a check for an ACH for about 217,000. And so that is to, because that is a federal fund, we need to appropriately account for it and put it in our budget. So you'll see the $221,383, and so that brings our total adjusted budget to $225,992. Okay, then going into our capital projects fund, which is 301 and 312, the $160,000 budget adjustment is for the junior bill the police received again in FY 24 that the budget had not been recorded. So that's to account for the 160,000 we're receiving from junior bill. And then you'll see that amount on vehicles, 294,000. So 160 of that is covered by junior bill. The other is general fund, or what was already allocated for that equipment. Okay. And then you'll see that transfer in 720,000 that came initially from general fund, and it's now right now in our capital projects fund. Then $739,000, you'll see that in equipment, and I took it out of infrastructure because it was just budgeted in the wrong line item in the budget. So that one is just kind of housekeeping budget adjustment. Okay, and then to our airport fund. So Ms. Kelly helped me with this one. She did say we have a $221,000 design and layout grant that we received. So that is part of the 253. And then we had initially a budget of $114,500 in our other airport grant. But that needed to be increased by $32,951. So the total is $253,962 to account for those grants. The $32,951 you'll see goes into the airport grounds and roadways maintenance account. And then you'll see the $221,000 as professional services because that is part of the design and layout plan. And that takes care of all of our budget adjustments. These were, like I said, just kind of key to hit those each budget so that none of them are over budget. So we can't submit anything that is over budget. Any questions on those?
My only question is, the law enforcement adjustment, you said we did not use 58,000 of that amount, we gotta pay it back, is that just because we're not staffed completely? Is that the reason why we didn't use
Well,
it?
because of the timing and when those officers get hired, yes, that is the reason why, is because you can only use certain positions that fall within the hired date that they specified. And he only had 2, and then one of them had quit, so then he had 3. It varied, so he was not able to
And
utilize
that
it.
can be used for the salaries.
Salaries and benefits. Mhm. Yeah, now they had gotten another one for 150,000, and that one was well expended. And then they'll receive another one fiscal year 25. I believe that amount is gonna be 117,000 or something, so it'll be significantly lower, but still helpful and not to utilize our general fund money to cover some of that. Okay, any questions on budget adjustments?
Liliana, for the vehicle one, for the 294, what was that for? It was under capital projects.
So that one consists of, I don't know how many units specifically, Veronica, but 160,000 of that is covered by junior bill.
Okay, that's what I thought, and you had said that. But I was just making sure that those two added up. Perfect. Do we have any other questions? Okay, hearing none, what is the pleasure for recommendation to council on resolution 2024-21 for fourth quarter budget adjustments?
To approve. Second.
I believe it was a motion by Mr. Woods and a second by Mr. Self. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Okay, next we'll move on to approval of resolution 2024-22, fourth quarter fiscal year 2024 final report.
Okay, so your other line, or other packet item is it'll say FY 2024 Q4. So skip the budget adjustment recap because that just kind of shows that everything's in budgeted. If it wasn't budgeted appropriately, you'd see a negative, and we would not want that. Okay, so FY 2024 quarter 4 is the final report. So typically I will present quarterly reports. It'll be just like this to council. But the fourth quarter has to be approved by resolution to be able to submit to our Department of Finance. So you'll see the report, and it lists all of our funds, and these are what are represented at this Department of Finance. Some of these funds consist of 2 or 3 or several of our in-code funds. Okay, so they're kind of married together in the report. But you can see our general fund. This is similar to a balance sheet. It's not going to show liabilities for you, but it's going to show your cash investments, what revenue and expenses we received throughout the year, and then an ending balance. The general fund will show an adjusted balance because we have to have a required reserve. And the state, our system automatically calculates that reserve for us, which is $898,000. Supposedly that should carry like a couple of months of our operating expenses. I don't think that's really the case because our expenses are really more in a month, but that's what they calculate, okay? So cash, and I'll kind of go over this. I'm not in detail on every fund, but just kind of give you an idea of what this report consists of. But the cash is the beginning cash is what is put in at the end of last fiscal year 23, okay? That was the cash. Investments are our current investments, and those are presented to us in our balance sheet. Oh, no, I have it right here. So the investments are what are represented to us as of 6/30/2024 balance sheet, okay? Not included balance sheets. No, I didn't include the balance sheets, no. These are just my working papers, but you are more than welcome to go through them as we go through the recording of the balances. Then the revenues we received year to date, this fiscal year, any transfers, these transfers will be netted that are in or coming in or we're going out, but they're net transfers or expenditures. Any adjustments, so any items in this line adjustment column will represent any changes to say like investments, any changes in our payables. It'll just capture the change so that it balances to our cash and our ending balance, okay? So some of them you'll just see rounding differences because our beginning cash may be rounded up or down. So you'll see some of the rounding differences. In our general fund, we have a balance of just a little over 6.5 million. I think a lot of that probably will go down a little bit as we have to do budget adjustments if a revenue was reported in general fund, when in fact it should have been reported to another fund. Okay. Also, I know that we received a good probably influx in our GRT just to capture that time frame that we had Walmart here. Probably a good revenue within those funds, okay? And then you'll see the other funds. Let's touch on our ARPA. Our ARPA fund is 861,000. That is the balance. Those funds have to be encumbered by December 31st of this year. We have, I believe, until December 2026 to expend it, but we do have to have those funds encumbered by December of this year. So we will be going before council probably to allocate the rest of those funds so we can expend those, okay? You'll see our LGB abatement opioid fund. Those funds, from what I understand, are going to be for the
Psychiatric.
Behavioral health
yeah,
center.
They have been allocated by council.
so restricted funds in a sense at the moment. Our other capital projects, that one consists of our 301, which that fund 301 is going to capture a lot of our grant projects that will go through that, okay? And then our 312 fund, which is our council or any projects that are not grant related. Our water project loan debt service, you'll see that on there with its remaining balance. Water enterprise, you'll see the investments grew a little bit. You'll see investments of 7.2. I'm sorry, did you say something?
No, ma'am.
The utility reserve, it's beginning cash with also the investments of a little over 3.2 million and ending cash a little over 4.1 million. You'll see other internal revenue service on here. I don't know why it says that. That's what's been used in the past, but it's actually it pertains to risk management accounts. So I don't know why it was labeled that. Maybe eventually I can get that cleaned up and not put it in internal revenue service because it doesn't. Right now that those funds are not tied to anything with the IRS. And then our other trust and agency, that one's going to capture a couple of funds just to give you an idea. Let me let you know what it is. It's gonna be like our economic development. We have a criminal justice fund a little bit in that, but mainly economic development is in there. That's a big one. And that's what other trust and agency fund will capture. So I've kind of just touched on some of the major funds. Is there any questions on the report? I presented the recap with it. Behind it is also the detail. So if you've got any questions of where maybe something might be in, it'll list it on the detail report. I think I printed a summary and a detail, but the detail will definitely, of course, give you more information. So that way you can see if you've got a question on investments or a question more on expenditures, you can see the detail of the expenditures on and in what fund.
Sorry, I was on mute. Do you have any questions? Okay, seeing none, what is a pleasure for resolution 2024-22 fourth quarter, fiscal year 2024 final report?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Self and a second by Mr. Wood. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, with that motion carries. Next, we will, thank you, Liliana, for this report. It is, all of the information that you gave us, the adjustments, the year-to-date, what we've expended up to like the percentage, portion of that. I really, really like this report, so I appreciate that again. I just wanted to let you know. I've not gone unnoticed for all of the hard work and the extra hours that you guys are putting in to make sure that our budget starts off right, our year ends correctly. So again, we really appreciate all the efforts that you and your team are doing.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will move to item 4. Item 4 is public hearing for approval of FY 2025 final budget. Item A is action to enter into the public hearing for the consideration of the final fiscal year 2025 budget adoption and approval of resolution 2024-23. We have a motion to move into a public hearing.
I thought that was just for tomorrow.
Yeah, Madam Chair, point of order. I don't think we advertise necessarily a public hearing for this, and we do have a public hearing on the budget tomorrow.
Okay, so
At our regular
we
meeting.
can just scratch that item. So can we just, do we need to amend the, do we need to amend the?
No, we can just pass over the public hearing and note that the public hearing will be held at the regular council meeting tomorrow evening.
Okay, so we will have that public hearing for the community tomorrow. Next item is item 5, other business, any matter not known about or which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the time of posting of the agenda. Do we have any other business?
Madam Chair, do we need to see a presentation of the FY 24-25 budget for recommendation to the full council?
I can touch on it a little bit, if I may.
I think so. I think
Sure.
I think we usually explain that to the finance committee. And then they will, when they understand it and ask any questions, make a recommendation for approval by the full council tomorrow after the public hearing.
Okay, so you've got in your packet also the FY 25 final budget. This is very, very similar to the preliminary budget that was already presented and approved. I did make some changes to it. I did have to make changes to the debt service schedule. So our debt service fund, and then the one that contains our $1.3 million annual payment, you'll see that also. And then our police funds, you'll see the $75,000 recruitment. I needed to add that in there. That's the amount that the state has allocated to them for the upcoming fiscal year. And then, like I talked about, that $225,000, you'll see that beginning cash balance of $58,848. And then they're receiving $112,000 for FY 25. And then the revenues expenditures, we plan to expend that money. However, if not, we will be paying that back. Okay. But you do see there that $58,000 where we will be putting it in our fiscal year 25 budget so that we can pay that amount back. And Javier, you may chime in if you want to or need to, but I'm explaining that this is the preliminary budget that was submitted and approved back in May with very minor changes just to the debt schedule, and then establishing the budget for the law enforcement recruitment and retention funds. And this is, again, it's in a sense like our skeleton budget. We will be working off of it with budget adjustments. We didn't have the time to go back in and account for every single project and grant that is currently going on. I will plan to meet with department heads as soon as possible with each one to be able to capture all of their budget projects and grants that they have going on so that we can be within budget. So you'll definitely be seeing some first quarter budget adjustments for some of those. Are there any questions on this final budget?
Madam Chair, I would ask a quick question. First of all, Lilia, and to the committee, this is a little bit unusual only because of the situation that we've had over the past few months, and Liliana coming in and Javier can address that. You know, I mean, they're playing catch up from July 1, 2023. So I think this is great work. I'm happy to see where we're at. So, you know, I guess, Lily, I guess what I'm asking is, So in October, we may begin to see budget adjustments, and maybe some of the things out of the 5 million that's the adjusted cash balance at the end. We may see some of that dwindle as we fix the budget more appropriately during the first quarter. Is that a nice guess?
Yes, that's a wonderful recap. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
start to see that dwindle down.
Well, again, I think you've done a great job. And I know you've put in many, many, many hours to get us to this point. And I know that, I don't know whether Lily made this comment, but we met with the Secretary of the Department of Finance and Administration and the director and the deputy director of local government division when the governor was in town with the cabinet. And they're okay with where we're at, and they too are impressed with the work that Lillian's doing. So
Thank you. We did explain to them where we were at, and we're not the only entities in the state that are, going through some of these challenging times, and they
yeah, but we've got
definitely
you and they don't. That's the good thing.
So where would you say we are at?
So financially, we're okay. Financially, we're okay. We were able to do budget adjustments without having to touch the reserves. So,
Okay, well, I guess my question is more along the lines is, how close are we to knowing where we're at and cleaning up the messes from the past and, having a good idea of where we're going forward?
that will be later on this fall as we work towards our FY 25 and establishing that budget and funds we're gonna need. We will probably be looking to, increase our payroll budgets. And not only that, our para has gone up. So we need to also make adjustments and take that into consideration, because our preliminary budget doesn't capture that. It's gonna be our new fiscal year 25 that we're gonna see budget adjustments. So it's gonna be later on before we really know where we're at.
Okay, but as far as cleanup from last year and possibly the year before, are we pretty comfortable with where our numbers ended up for those 2 years, or are we still discovering things, or?
The last 2 years, no. The last year, yes, we're gonna be working to clean some of that up, with journal entries and budget adjustments, but I feel comfortable with the prior year, not quite 24, but quite 23. Any other questions? It's been a lot. I came in and revenues were put in as debits. So I spent probably my first week cleaning up those, their budget adjustments, cleaning up, putting that in. There was expenses reported in revenue accounts. So there's just quite a bit. And I don't know that we can go back in a sense and clean all that up, because we need to close our year for our audit. But we can at least fix our revenues.
Veronica, do we need a motion or for a recommendation for us to approve for the meeting, council meeting tomorrow?
Yes, those are great questions. Before we move on, are we good with questions? We have any others? Okay, hearing none, what is the recommendation of the Finance Committee for the final budget?
Move to recommend it to the council.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Wood and a second by Mr. Self. All in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, with that, we can move on to the other business. Does anybody have anything that they have for the committee? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to item 6, which is the adjournment. Thank you guys again for your time and sorry that I was not in person. I appreciate everybody's, efforts towards this and our committee for being active and involved. We appreciate all of you guys. Thank you so much and y'all have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.